Hello, everybody. Welcome to the first segment of the frequently answered questions. Today, we're going to be going over lookup tables, how to use them, and why you should be using them inside of Mixpanel. I'm Austin,
I'm Ashcon.
And I'm Evan.
and yeah, today we're going to go over lookup tables. So, Evan, go ahead and take it away.
Awesome. All right, everybody. Cool. So just as a quick overview of what lookup tables are, basically the idea is if you have an event in your project, for example, a video event or an add item to cart event or something like that, depending on which vertical you're in, you'll often have a backend table where the primary key is basically the ID of the video or the ID of the item. And then you'll have a whole bunch of columns in that table describing various like extra information you have about that item. So in this example that we're seeing right here, I have this sort of dummy data project where I have a play video event. That play video event has my video ID. And let's say, in this particular example, I've done my implementation, I've sent in my video IDs, but I'm realizing I actually also want, let's say, the video category and the video name, but this data is already in my Mixpanel project. And rather than starting from scratch, I want to figure out some way to basically import the data from my backend table and use that data in Mixpanel. So we can see here in this report, I'm breaking down my play video events by the video ID. We can see video ID 1013 has the sort of most plays here, but that's not a particularly useful answer because now I got to go run a query on my table and see what video 1013 is. So what lookup tables is going to allow us to do is basically join everything together. Here in this Google sheet, I actually have basically another sort of like fake data, and you can kind of see where my subconscious is right here. But basically, the format of the lookup table is just going to be column A, or the first column is going to be all of the video IDs or whatever ID you're going to use. And then you can add as many columns as you want. This could go out as far as you want over here with new sort of like virtual properties that are going to show up in Mixpanel. And all you need to do at that point is download as a CSV. So I'm going to just go ahead and do that. That's just going to download this particular tab as a CSV, and now I'm ready to use the feature in Mixpanel. Cool. So to get to lookup tables, what you'll do is go to Data Management, open up Lexicon. I have that tab open here. And then you'll usually start out on the Events tab, and then jump over to Lookup Tables. And all you have to do is add a lookup table. So I'm going to find my CSV for video IDs. And now I'm going to choose which property to use as that video ID. So the property that I choose here is going to have the values of column A. Video ID, save. It's asking me if I want to overwrite because I was playing around with this project beforehand, but in your case, it'll just be brand new. And now I'll pop back over here to my insights report. I'll refresh. And instead of looking at video ID, now I have basically a sub menu for video ID where I also have video category and video name. So now I can actually figure out what that video 1013 was, and it was The Hangover. We can also just kind of play around with this a little bit more and see, categories and names. We also have access to our original video ID just as the sort of top property in the submenu. So going back like this, now instead of just seeing 1013, we basically have all this extra information that we imported from the spreadsheet.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. It seems like this would be especially useful for e-commerce, right? If you just wanted to bring in your product IDs for, product viewed or product purchased or whatever, you can then start to attach a lot of information to that product, right? So which category does it belong to? What's the price of it? What color is it? Kind of all these attribution elements of the product that maybe you didn't get in your project the first time, but now you can, retroactively add them in. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, I actually thought of that. So I do have like item IDs as the second example that I had in this demo that I was going to give. But yeah, I mean, basically the way to think about it is there are kind of two problems that this solves. One is just kind of like the size of the data you're sending across to Mixpanel. So rather than having to send, an add item to cart event with the item name and the item price and the, a whole bunch of things, and then you just send that every single time somebody adds that item to cart, that's like, kind of just an inefficient use of data. Now you can simply send just, the item ID and then have the sort of like lookup tables piece take care of all the heavy lifting there. The other problem it solves is just the more practical one where you have a bunch of data that's already in Mixpanel. You kind of can't go change it very easily. So now you can basically just augment that data by matching up an ID to a CSV that you have.
Yeah, that's huge. There's so many implementations out there where obviously it wasn't the main idea to just pull in a subset of data and then, need to reconcile it outside or separately. And now going in and fixing it moving forward is one thing. Then you have all this retroactive data. Whereas now, whether it be by design, you only want to fetch a certain variable, or you just happen to only fetch a certain variable, you can reconcile it by just uploading the table. I think it's really cool. I mean, not having to leave Mixpanel to then do your analysis is what makes it really fluid.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I've dealt with so many customers that get data into their Mixpanel system and then realize afterwards that they want more data and they can't do the analysis that they really want to do simply because they weren't collecting data at the time. This could be a nice and easy fix for anything of that nature.
Exactly. And let me just sort of quickly pop through the other example, which you guys sort of independently thought of. So I'm just going to add another lookup table here, and this one is for item IDs. One cool thing also is when I apply this to the item ID property, oh gosh, let me just refresh this real quick. Item IDs. All right. When I apply this to the item ID property, it's going to apply to item ID across all of the events I have. So it's not like I need to, specify this for the add item to cart item ID and then also for the purchase item ID, etc. It'll just apply to the property. I actually have just a quick example of a funnel set up here where it's add item to cart and then purchase item. And again, just sort of showing how using the item ID itself is not particularly useful when you're trying to do funnel analysis. So you can see here, item 1007 has 100% conversion rate from item added to cart and to purchase. But now that I've basically added that lookup table, I can refresh. And now instead of just using item ID, I can use item name. Let's do let's do a multi-breakdown here just so that we can see both things at the same time. So here I can see my, where was that? 1007, right? Oh, I see. Well, anyway, basically what we can see here is instead of just seeing the item IDs, I can also see the name of the item.
Oh, people love knives.
Yeah, knives are great. Oh yeah, knives was the example that I was looking at here. Again, sorry for the names of these items. I was just kind of thinking of random things.
Cool. Yeah. Well, this has definitely been helpful for me, and it's definitely something I'm going to be using for a lot of my clients who have had it before, and definitely clients who I'm going to be having in the future. Any other cool thing that we should know about, Evan, when it comes to lookup tables?
Yes. One last cool thing to know about is what I showed just now was basically the way to like manually go into Mixpanel and add a CSV. There's also a way to do this via API. So the way this would actually work, like let's say we were setting up a new implementation, we wouldn't recommend, just sending in item ID and then manually going and like uploading a new CSV every time you add a new item to your inventory. Mm-hmm. Instead, we would suggest basically every time a new item gets added in your backend, you basically have some instrumentation such that that data is sent straight to your Mixpanel lookup table. So once the implementation is done, no one has to think about it. The sort of representation of your lookup table in Mixpanel continues to get updated as items get added to your inventory. And yet the only data that actually has to hit Mixpanel on the event side is simply just the ID. So pretty powerful from a programmatic perspective. And also from a practical perspective in the use case where you know you have extra data in your backend and you just want to do like a quick and dirty join.
Okay, so I was going to ask if you would ever recommend the case of only tracking, let's say you could fetch other variables about an item, only tracking the ID so as to make the implementation easier, especially for, ongoing additions. So this way it's less friction if you have to implement new track calls for any additional item added. You're only pulling in the ID in that case.
Yeah, that's a good question. I think it actually probably is going to depend more on the specific use case. I know that there's some big but existing size limit to lookup tables. So like, I don't know, if you were a media company where you had tens of thousands of different videos, I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for something like that. But if you were an e-commerce company with, 20 items like in this demo, maybe that would make sense to do. So probably this depends on the specifics, but having a conversation about that is certainly worthwhile.
Cool. Well, this has been super, super helpful for me. I hope anybody who's watching this has gotten a ton of value out of this and has a much better idea for how lookup tables can really help their Mixpanel project and provide some useful insights. So yeah, no, this has been awesome. Thank you for sharing with us, Evan.
Of course.
Thanks, Evan.
Well, that is all, everybody. Thank you so much for your time, and we'll be showing the next segment soon.